The chamber was enormous, stretching upward into darkness that seemed to have no end. Lights from 1,000 different worlds glowed softly along the curved walls, each one representing a species that belonged to the Galactic Council. At the center of it all stood a raised platform where 14 alien representatives sat in their designated seats, looking down at the two humans who stood alone on the floor below. Commander Jake Morrison kept his hands clasped behind his back, his military uniform crisp and perfect. Next to him, Ambassador Lisa Hartley held a datapad, though she wasn't looking at it. Both of them knew this meeting would not go well. They had known it before their ship even docked at the station. The Zynthian Council chair clicked its mandibles together, a sound that echoed through the vast space. The insectoid creature was nearly 8 feet tall, its exoskeleton gleaming under the lights. When it spoke, the translation device made its voice sound cold and mechanical. The human delegation will remain silent until permitted to speak, the chair announced. This council has gathered evidence of numerous violations committed by the Terran Empire. The charges are severe, and the proof is overwhelming. Lisa started to speak, but Jake touched her elbow gently. Not yet. Let them talk first. They needed to hear everything before responding. A holographic display materialized in the air above them, showing star maps of the outer regions. Red markers indicated human colonies scattered across dozens of systems. A Velcrin ambassador rose from his seat, his reptilian features twisted into what might have been anger or disgust. It was hard to tell with their species. The humans have established colonies in 73 systems that fall under disputed territory, the Velcrin named Cross said, his voice a deep rumble. They were warned to cease expansion. They ignored our warnings. They ignored our laws. More images appeared, showing human warships patrolling trade routes, human stations bristling with weapons, human soldiers training on distant worlds. The presentation was carefully crafted to make humanity look aggressive and dangerous. Furthermore, Cross continued, the humans refuse to share their weapons technology with the Council. They develop new systems in secret. They build ships we cannot track. They act as if they are above the laws that govern civilized space. Another alien spoke up. This one, a floating creature that looked like a jellyfish, surrounded by a shimmering energy field. They violate our trade restrictions. They make deals with species outside Council approval. They spread their influence without permission. The charges went on for nearly an hour. Every complaint was delivered with the same tone of absolute certainty. The Council had decided humans were a problem, and they had gathered all the evidence they needed to support that conclusion. It didn't matter that half the charges were exaggerated or that the other half ignored important context. The Council had made up their minds. Finally, the Zynthian chair raised one of its blade-like arms for silence. The Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision. The Terran Empire represents a threat to galactic stability and must be brought under proper authority. Now the real demands came. The holographic display changed to show a list of requirements, each one more insulting than the last. The Terran Empire will immediately evacuate all colonies in disputed territories, the chair stated. All human settlements beyond your home system and the 3 nearest systems will be dismantled. This is not negotiable. Lisa's jaw tightened, but she remained quiet. Second, the Terran military fleet will be reduced by 70%. You will submit complete documentation of all remaining vessels to Council oversight. Your weapons research programs will be shut down, and your scientists will share all technological developments with the Council. Jake's expression didn't change, but his eyes grew colder. Third, the Terran Empire will accept Council representatives who will oversee your government, economy, and military operations. You will make no major decisions without Council approval. Trade agreements, diplomatic relations, and resource allocation will all require our permission. The list continued. Humans would pay reparations for their violations. Human ships would be restricted to designated travel routes. Human citizens would be subject to Council law enforcement. It went on and on, each demand stripping away another piece of human sovereignty. You have 10 standard days to signal your compliance. the chair finished. If you refuse, the Council will have no choice but to enforce these requirements through military action. Cross stood again, his massive form radiating menace. Let me be clear, humans. Other species have defied this Council in the past. None of them remain independent today. Some barely remain at all. You are newcomers to the galaxy. You do not understand how power works here. But you will learn. The chamber fell silent. Every alien eye, whether they had 2 or 12, focused on the 2 humans standing below. The message was obvious. Submit or be destroyed. Finally, the chair gestured toward them. The human delegation may now respond. Lisa stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. Ambassador Cross mentioned that we're newcomers to the galaxy. He's right about that. We've only been exploring space for a few generations. But in that short time, we've learned something important. She looked up at each council member in turn. We've learned that bullies exist everywhere. On Earth, in space, apparently even in galactic governments. We've also learned that bullies count on fear to get their way. They make threats and expect everyone to fall in line. You dare! Cross began. But the chair silenced him with a gesture. Lisa continued. You've presented your demands. We'll deliver them to our government. But I want to be clear about something. Humanity didn't come to the stars looking for a fight. We came looking for friends, for knowledge, for a place among the civilized species. We're still looking for those things. Then you will comply, the chair said. I said we'll deliver your message, Lisa replied. I didn't say we'd obey. Jake finally spoke, his voice quiet but carrying clearly through the chamber. The Council might want to review its intelligence reports on human history. We have a long tradition of responding poorly to ultimatums. He pulled out his communicator, not even asking for permission. Morrison to the Valiant. Drake, are you receiving? A moment later, Admiral Kevin Drake's voice came through, crisp and professional. Loud and clear, Commander. They've made their choice, Jake said, his eyes never leaving the Zynthian chair. Initiate Protocol Omega. Acknowledged. Protocol Omega is active. All units standing by. Jake put the communicator away and looked up at the Council one last time. 10 days. We'll have our answer for you then. As he and Lisa turned to leave, Cross called out. What makes you think your pathetic century of spaceflight will save you? Jake paused at the doorway and looked back. Maybe nothing will save us. But I'll tell you what won't save you. Underestimating us. The doors closed behind them, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. None of the aliens spoke for a long moment. They had expected fear, pleading, maybe anger. They hadn't expected defiance. They certainly hadn't expected humans to walk out as if the Council's threats meant nothing. The Zynthian chair clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. Prepare the fleet. If they want to be made an example of, we'll oblige them. Across the station, Jake and Lisa walked quickly toward their shuttle. Neither of them spoke until they were safely inside with the doors sealed. That went about as well as we expected, Lisa said quietly. Jake nodded. They think they're dealing with just another species that'll cave under pressure. They have no idea what's coming. One of the Mytine. They think they're dealing with coming. Are we really doing this? She asked. Going to war with the entire Galactic Council? They're the ones who declared war, Jake replied. We're just going to finish it. The shuttle undocked and headed for the waiting Terran warship. Behind them, the Council began mobilizing the largest fleet in galactic history. They were confident, certain of victory. After all, they had numbers, experience, and the combined might of 14 species. What they didn't have was an understanding of human determination, or human ingenuity, or the simple fact that humans, when pushed into a corner, didn't surrender. They fought back. President Nicole Warren stood at the head of the conference table, looking at the faces of her military commanders and diplomatic advisors. The emergency session had been called within an hour of Jake Morrison's transmission from the council station. Everyone in the room understood the gravity of the situation. So they're really doing this, General Ryan Collins said, shaking his head. They're actually threatening us with total war if we don't surrender our sovereignty. Not just threatening, Admiral Kevin Drake corrected. According to our intelligence, they're already mobilizing their fleet. Fleet Commander Thrak is assembling ships from all the council member species. Current estimates put the armada at around 800 vessels. Vice Admiral Amanda Pierce pulled up a holographic display showing the council's fleet positions. If they want to invade, that's where they'll come through. President Warren studied the display for a long moment. What are our people saying? What's the public mood? Lisa Hartley, who had returned to Earth on the fastest ship available, answered. Mixed, Madam President. About 40% want us to negotiate. Find some middle ground. They're scared of what war with the council means. Another 40% are angry and want to fight. The remaining 20% are waiting to see what you decide. Middle ground, Warren repeated. Is there such a thing? Can we negotiate with them? I don't think so, Lisa said honestly. The council isn't interested in compromise. They see us as upstart children who need to be disciplined. They've done this to other species before. Force them to submit? Strip away their military power? Install council overseers? Those species are basically puppets now. Major Dan Rodriguez, head of Special Operations, leaned forward. The council thinks we're weak because we're new to space. They look at our 100 years of spaceflight and compare it to their thousands of years. They think experience equals power. They're wrong about that, Drake said quietly. Warren looked at her admiral. You sound confident. I am, Madam President. We've been preparing for this scenario since first contact with the council. We saw how they operated, how they pushed around smaller species. We knew eventually they'd try it with us. Drake pulled up another display, this one showing Terran fleet positions. Our ships have been pulling back from forward positions. The council thinks we're preparing to surrender. But we're not, Pierce added. We're consolidating our forces for a coordinated strike. Every ship that's pulled back is repositioning for Protocol Omega. Warren sat down heavily. The weight of the decision pressed on her shoulders. If we fight, people will die. Our people. Maybe millions of them. Can we win? Yes, Drake said without hesitation. But it won't be easy, and it won't be clean. Explain. Drake stood and manipulated the holographic display. The Council's strength comes from numbers and conventional tactics. They have more ships than us. That's true, but their technology is standardized across all member species. They share the same shield designs, the same weapons, the same strategies. It makes their fleet easy to coordinate. It also makes them predictable, Collins added. Exactly. Drake continued. We've spent 3 years developing weapons and tactics, specifically designed to counter Council technology. Our railguns can punch through their shields because they're optimized for energy weapons, not kinetic strikes. Our jump drives are faster and more accurate than theirs. Our electronic warfare capabilities are decades ahead of anything they have. Pierce took over. We've also placed intelligence assets throughout Council space. Lieutenant Kyle Bennett and his teams have been quietly sabotaging key installations, gathering information, and preparing for this exact situation. Warren looked at each person in turn. And you all believe we can actually defeat the entire Galactic Council? We can, Drake said. The question is whether we should. Once we start this, there's no going back. The galaxy will never be the same. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Warren stood up. Our ancestors didn't fight their way out of tyranny on Earth just so we could submit to tyranny in space. She looked at Drake. How long until Thrak's fleet reaches the Hadrian Gate? Rake 4. Wender 7. They'll be in position in 9 days. Then we use those 9 days to prepare. Send coded messages to all our colonies. Evacuate civilians from any system that might see combat. Get our people to safety. The Council will see the evacuations. Lisa warned. Let them. They'll think it's proof we're surrendering. Meanwhile, Admiral Drake, you'll position our fleet for maximum effect. When Thrak crosses into our territory, we hit him with everything we have. Drake smiled grimly. Yes, Madam President. The meeting continued for hours as they refined the strategy. Every detail mattered. Timing, positioning, communication protocols. They couldn't afford mistakes. Across the galaxy, Fleet Commander Thrak stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as ships from 14 species assembled around him. The Velcrin warrior had fought in 7 conflicts, crushing rebellions and enforcing council will. He was very good at his job. His second-in-command, a Xinthian officer named Vrex, approached. The fleet is nearly assembled, Commander. We'll have full strength in 6 days. Excellent. Thrak rumbled. What's the status of the human forces? They're evacuating their outer colonies. Military ships are pulling back to defensive positions around their core worlds. Intelligence suggests they're preparing to negotiate. Thrak's reptilian features twisted into something like a smile. Of course they are. They're terrified. They know what happens to species that defy the Council. Should we prepare terms for their surrender? No need. The terms were already delivered. They'll accept them, or we'll destroy their fleet and impose them by force. Thrak studied the tactical display. How many human ships do we estimate they have? Approximately 200 combat-capable vessels. Most are smaller than our cruisers. 200 against 800. And they're retreating. This will be over quickly. Thrak turned away from the display. Send a message to the Council. Tell them the humans will comply within 10 days, or cease to be a problem entirely. What Thrak didn't know was that human intelligence was monitoring every communication his fleet sent. Kyle Bennett and his team, operating from a hidden station near Council space, intercepted the message and immediately forwarded it to Terran Command. Bennett looked at his team. They think we're beaten already. They're not even bothering with reconnaissance or advanced scouting. Arrogance. His second, Lieutenant Eric Zimmerman, said. They've won so many times before. They think they're invincible. That's going to cost them, Bennett said. He opened a secure channel to Drake. Admiral, the Council fleet is showing no indication they expect resistance. They're bunching their ships together for maximum intimidation value. Drake's voice came back calm and confident. Perfect. When they're all in one place, we'll hit them all at once. Continue monitoring and report any changes. Understood, sir. The days ticked down. Human civilians evacuated from border colonies, heading to safer systems. Terran warships moved quietly into position, using their advanced jump drives to place themselves exactly where Drake wanted them. The Council fleet continued to assemble, more ships arriving each day. On Earth, President Warren addressed the planet. She didn't reveal the military plans, but she made humanity's position clear. We've been given an ultimatum by the Galactic Council. They demand we surrender our freedom, our sovereignty, and our right to determine our own future. My answer is simple. No. We will not submit to tyranny. We will defend our homes, our families, and our future. Whatever comes next, we face it as free people. The speech was broadcast across human space. On colonies, stations, and ships, humans heard their president's words and made their choice. Fear was real, but so was determination. Humanity would not go quietly into subjugation. Ambassador Cross received the message and laughed. She thinks speeches will save them. How typical of primitives. They mistake words for power. But on the Terran warship Valiant, Admiral Drake watched the same speech and felt proud. His president had given him the authority he needed. Now, it was time to show the Council what human power really looked like. Captain Megan Torres stood on the bridge of the TNS Liberty, checking her weapons systems for the 10th time. Her ship was one of the newest in the fleet, equipped with the latest railgun technology. She'd trained her crew for this moment, running simulation after simulation. They were ready. "Captain," her tactical officer called out. Receiving deployment orders from Fleet Command, Torres read the orders and smiled. "Set course for Rendezvous Point Alpha. Looks like we're going to be right in the middle of the action." Throughout human space, similar scenes played out. Captains received their orders. Crews prepared for combat. Special operations teams activated their contingency plans. Everything was moving according to Drake's strategy. The Council fleet reached full strength with 2 days remaining before the deadline. Thrak surveyed his armada with satisfaction. 800 ships, representing the combined military might of the galaxy's most powerful alliance. No force could stand against them. He sent one final message to Earth. "Your time is up. Surrender or be destroyed." President Warren's response was brief, a single word transmitted across space. "No." Thrak received the message and gave the order. "All ships, prepare to advance. We enter human territory at dawn. Destroy any resistance. Show them the price of defiance." The Council fleet began moving toward the Hadrian Gate. Behind them, they left nothing but confidence and certainty. Ahead of them waited humanity's fleet, hidden and ready. The battle that would change the galaxy was about to begin. The Hadrian Gate hung in space like a massive ring of ancient metal and energy. It was one of the old jump points, built by a civilization that had disappeared thousands of years ago. Now it served as the primary entrance into human territory, and Fleet Commander Thrak was leading his armada straight through it. 800 ships moved in a formation designed to intimidate. The largest vessels, Council dreadnoughts the size of small cities, led the way. Behind them came cruisers, destroyers, and support ships from 14 different species. The Council had brought overwhelming force, certain that the sight alone would make humans surrender. As the fleet approached the gate, Thrak's sensors detected a single human ship waiting on the other side. Just one destroyer, holding position directly in their path. "Interesting," Thrak muttered. "They send one ship to meet us. Is it a messenger? Carrying terms of surrender?" His communications officer spoke up. "Receiving transmission from the human vessel, Commander. It identifies itself as the TNS Defiant. Put it through." The view screen showed a human male in a military uniform. He looked young, perhaps in his 30s, with short brown hair and calm eyes. "I'm Commander Brandon Hayes of the Terran Empire. You are ordered to turn back immediately. You are not authorized to enter Terran space." Thrak couldn't help it. He laughed. The sound echoed across his bridge, and his crew joined in. "You order me? You stand before 800 warships with a single destroyer and give me orders?" "That's correct," Brandon said, his expression unchanged. "Surrender your vessel immediately, and we'll spare your crew," Thrak said, still amused. "Refuse, and we'll add your wreckage to our victory record." Brandon's response was simple: "No." Then the Defiant opened fire. Railgun rounds crossed the distance between the destroyer and the Council fleet at incredible speed. The first volley hit 3 cruisers in the forward line. The Council's energy shields flickered and died as kinetic rounds punched straight through them. Explosions blossomed across the cruisers' hulls. Thrak stopped laughing. "All ships, return fire. Destroy that vessel," the Council fleet responded, hundreds of plasma cannons lighting up space with deadly energy. But the Defiant was already moving, its engines flaring as it dodged between incoming fire. More railgun rounds hammered into Council ships, each shot precisely targeted at weak points in their armor. "How are their weapons penetrating our shields?" Thrak demanded. "The weapons aren't energy-based, Commander," his tactical officer reported. "They're firing solid projectiles at extreme velocity. Our shields aren't designed to stop kinetic impacts of that magnitude." A Council destroyer exploded as the Defiant's guns found its reactor. Another ship lost power. drifting helplessly as its systems failed. "Surround it," Thrak ordered. "All ships converge on that target." The Council fleet began to swarm toward the lone human ship. 50 vessels moved to encircle the Defiant, their weapons firing continuously. But then, something happened that Thrak didn't expect. The Defiant simply vanished. One moment it was there, dodging between Council ships. The next moment it was gone, leaving behind only the fading energy signature of a jump drive activation. "Where did it go?" Thrak roared. "Unknown, Commander. Their jump technology doesn't match anything in our database. We can't track it. We can't track it." Before Thrak could respond, his sensors lit up with new contacts. Dozens of them. Hundreds of them. Human ships were emerging from jump points all around the Council fleet, appearing from every direction at once. Admiral Kevin Drake watched the tactical display from the bridge of the Valiant. Everything was going according to plan. The Council had bunched their fleet together, making them easy targets. Now his forces had them surrounded. "All ships, engage at will," Drake ordered calmly. "Execute pattern." Omega-7, the Terran fleet opened fire from 3 sides simultaneously. Railguns hammered Council ships from unexpected angles. Missiles streaked through space, overwhelming point defense systems. Human destroyers, smaller and faster than Council cruisers, darted between enemy vessels like wolves among sheep. Captain Megan Torres pushed her ship, the Liberty, into the thick of the battle. Her railguns fired in perfect rhythm, each shot calculated by her weapons officer to hit vital systems. A Xinthian cruiser tried to target her, but she rolled her ship and accelerated, coming up under the enemy vessel's belly where its weapons couldn't track her. "Fire all forward batteries," she ordered. The Liberty's guns roared, sending a stream of metal death into the cruiser's unprotected underside. The alien ship broke apart, internal explosions tearing it into pieces. "Great shooting," her tactical officer called out. "Enemy cruiser destroyed. Find me another target," Torres said. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Council ships found themselves outmatched by human tactics and technology. Their energy shields, perfected over centuries of warfare, were nearly useless against kinetic weapons. Their plasma cannons, while powerful, couldn't hit the faster-moving human ships. Thrak tried desperately to organize his forces, but human electronic warfare was crippling his communications. Lieutenant Eric Zimmerman and his team, operating from specialized warfare ships, were flooding Council frequencies with jamming signals and false data. Individual Council ships couldn't coordinate with each other, couldn't share tactical information, couldn't execute fleet maneuvers. "Communications are down across 70% of the fleet," Thrak's officer reported. "Ships are fighting independently. And fighting independently, they were losing." A Council dreadnought, one of the massive flagships that represented Council power, found itself targeted by 5 human destroyers at once. The ships coordinated their attack perfectly, hitting the dreadnought from multiple angles. Railgun rounds tore through armor plating. Missiles found their marks on weapon systems and engines. Within 10 minutes, the mighty dreadnought was disabled, drifting powerless through space. Commander Brandon Hayes brought the Defiant back into the fight, emerging from a jump point directly behind a cluster of Council support ships. His weapons officer had already calculated firing solutions, and the destroyer's guns spoke again. 3 support vessels exploded before they even knew the Defiant had returned. "Jump point detected," his sensor officer warned. "Council reinforcements arriving." "Negative," Brandon said, checking his display. "Those are ours. Captain Nathan Cross and the Resolute. Right on schedule." The Resolute and its accompanying squadron added their firepower to the battle. More Council ships died. The space around Hadrian Gate became a graveyard of broken vessels and debris. Thrak watched his fleet disintegrate and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of warfare: fear. His 800 ships were being torn apart by a smaller human force. The battle that should have been an easy victory had turned into a massacre. "Pull back," he ordered. All ships retreat to Rally Point Beta, but giving orders and executing them were different things when communications were compromised. Some ships received the order and began to withdraw. Others, cut off from command, continued fighting. A few tried to run but were hunted down by human vessels that could track them through jump space. Admiral Drake watched enemy ships starting to flee and made a decision. All ships, let them go. Do not pursue beyond the gate. Consolidate our position and begin rescue operations. The Battle of Hadrian Gate lasted 6 hours total. When it ended, the space around the jump point was filled with wreckage. Debris from Council ships drifted in silent clouds. Some vessels were completely destroyed, nothing left but expanding fields of metal and atmosphere. Others were disabled but intact, their crews trapped inside waiting for rescue or death. Thrak managed to escape with barely 200 ships, many of them damaged. His grand armada, the pride of the Council, had been shattered. He sat on his bridge in stunned silence, trying to understand what had happened. How could primitives, newcomers to space, defeat the combined might of the Council? On the Valiant, Drake received damage reports from his fleet. 4 ships lost, sir. The destroyers Phoenix, Guardian, and 2 escorts. 11 ships with moderate to severe damage. 4 ships lost versus more than 600 Council vessels destroyed or disabled. Drake felt no joy in the numbers. Every lost ship meant dead crew members, people under his command who wouldn't be going home. But he had achieved what seemed impossible. He had stopped the Council's invasion. Begin recovery operations, he ordered. Pull our damaged ships back for repairs, and someone contact the Council vessels that are still intact. Offer them medical aid and safe passage out of our territory. Sir? His tactical officer asked, surprised. They're defeated, Drake said. No point in killing people who can't fight back. We're not like the Council. We don't wage war on helpless enemies. Throughout the fleet, human ships began rescue operations. They pulled Council survivors from damaged vessels. They provided medical aid to the wounded. They even towed disabled enemy ships back through the gate into neutral space. President Warren received Drake's report and addressed the public once more. Today, human forces defended our territory against invasion. We faced overwhelming odds and prevailed. But this war is not over. The Council will not accept defeat easily. They'll regroup and try again. We must be ready. 4. Maybeing. Antelsenov. She paused, looking directly into the camera. To the species of the Galactic Council who sent their ships against us. We did not seek this conflict. You demanded our surrender, and we refused. You sent your fleet to enforce your will, and we defended ourselves. Your ships lie broken because you underestimated human determination. But we are not cruel. Your wounded are being cared for. Your survivors are being returned safely. We fight when we must, but we do not slaughter the helpless. That is what separates us from you. Across the galaxy, the message played on every Council world. The mighty fleet sent to crush humanity had been destroyed. The species they had dismissed as primitive had proven themselves in battle. And perhaps most surprising to the Council members who watched, the humans had shown mercy. In the Council chamber where this had all begun, the Zynthian chair watched the broadcast in silence. Around it, other Council members argued and shouted, trying to assign blame for the disaster. Ambassador Cross slammed his fist on his desk. This is impossible. How did they defeat us? They were prepared, the chair said quietly. They knew we would come and they planned for it. We underestimated them. Then we send a larger fleet, Cross insisted. Mobilize every ship we have. But other voices spoke up. Species that had watched their ships destroyed at Hadrian Gate. Fear replaced arrogance. Doubt replaced certainty. The Council that had seemed so unified was beginning to crack. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaos. Representatives from 14 species shouted at each other across the grand chamber, accusations and recriminations flying back and forth. The carefully maintained image of unity and strength had shattered along with the fleet at Hadrian Gate. The Xinthian chair clicked its mandibles sharply, trying to restore order. Silence. We must present a unified response to this disaster. Unified? A representative from the Taural Confederacy stood, its translucent body shimmering with agitation. You sent our ships to die in a battle you promised would be easy. You said the humans would surrender. Instead, 600 vessels were destroyed, and thousands of our people are dead. The humans got lucky, Ambassador Cross growled, though even he didn't sound convinced. We underestimated their weapons technology. It won't happen again. No, it won't, agreed a Mindran delegate. Because we're not sending any more ships. The chamber erupted again. The Xinthians and Velkrin, the Council's founding members, demanded total commitment to crushing humanity. But other species, having watched their fleets burn, were less enthusiastic about continued warfare. While the Council argued, Admiral Kevin Drake was preparing to ensure they had more to argue about. Operation Retribution had been planned months ago as a contingency if war with the Council ever became reality. Now it was time to execute it. Drake stood in the Valiant's war room with his senior officers. The Council is in disarray. They weren't prepared for defeat, and they don't know how to respond. We need to keep them off balance, hit them before they can reorganize. Vice Admiral Amanda Pierce pulled up the tactical display. We've identified 12 priority targets. Council, military installations, shipyards, supply depots, and communication hubs. They're spread across 3 sectors. Can we hit all 12 simultaneously? Drake asked. We can, confirmed Captain Nathan Cross. We've divided the fleet into strike groups, each with a specific target. My squadron will take Velor Station, their primary shipyard. Captain Torres has the sensor network at Kelvar. Commander Hayes is hitting their fleet anchorage at Draxus. Drake studied the plans one more time. It was aggressive. Maybe too aggressive. But humanity needed to prove that Hadrian Gate wasn't a fluke. They needed to show the Council that humans could strike anywhere, anytime. Execute Operation Retribution. All strike groups jump in 60 minutes. Across human space, warships prepared for the largest coordinated offensive humanity had ever attempted. Crews ran final checks on weapons and engines. Captains reviewed their assignments. This wasn't just about military victory anymore. This was about survival. If the Council regrouped and came at them again with their full strength, humanity might not survive. Captain Nathan Cross stood on the bridge of the Resolute as his ship prepared to jump. Velor Station was the Council's largest shipyard, capable of building 50 capital ships simultaneously. Destroying it would cripple Council ship production for years. All ships report ready, sir, his executive officer announced. Then let's get this done, Nathan said. Initiate jump sequence. The Resolute and its squadron vanished from human space, crossing light years in an instant. They emerged in the Velor system to find the massive station hanging in orbit, surrounded by partially built warships and defensive platforms. They weren't expecting us, Nathan's tactical officer said with satisfaction. They will be soon. All ships. Attack pattern Delta. Target the construction bays first. Then the defensive platforms. The Terran ships swept through the system like an avenging storm. Railgun fire tore into the incomplete Council warships, destroying them before they could ever fight. Missiles struck the station's construction facilities, causing explosions that rippled through entire sections. The defensive platforms tried to respond, but human ships were too fast, too coordinated. Within an hour, Velor Station was a burning wreck, decades of construction work destroyed. The Council's ability to replace their lost fleet crippled. At the same time, similar attacks were happening across Council space. Captain Megan Torres led her squadron against the sensor network at Kelvar Prime. The massive array of detection satellites and communication relays allowed the Council to track ship movements across multiple sectors. Torres and her ships destroyed it systematically, node by node, until the Council was blind across an entire region of space. Commander Brandon Hayes and the Defiant hit the fleet anchorage at Draxus. Council ships, damaged from previous battles and waiting for repairs, were sitting targets. Hayes felt no joy in destroying helpless vessels, but war was war. The Council had started this fight. Humanity was going to finish it. Commander Ashley Grant led a wing of fighters in a daring strike against a Council command center. Her small ships, too fast for enemy targeting systems to track effectively, penetrated the station's defenses and planted charges on critical systems. When they detonated, the entire command infrastructure for that sector went offline. On the ground, Major Dan Rodriguez and his special operations teams were executing their own missions. They infiltrated Council detention facilities where human prisoners were being held. The Council had captured several hundred humans during border skirmishes over the years, keeping them in facilities that were supposed to be secret. Rodriguez led his team through the detention center on Vorsec 3 with ruthless efficiency. Guards who resisted were eliminated. Those who surrendered were secured, but not harmed. Within 20 minutes, his team had freed 173 human prisoners, but they found something else too. Other species, held in similar conditions. Aliens who had questioned Council authority, or whose species had tried to resist Council domination. Hundreds of them, locked away and forgotten. "Sir, what do we do about them?" one of Rodriguez's soldiers asked, gesturing to the alien prisoners. "We take them all," Rodriguez said. "Every last one. The Council wants to pretend they're the good guys? Let's show the galaxy what they really are." The freed prisoners, human and alien alike, were evacuated on Terran ships. Rodriguez made sure every moment was documented, every testimony recorded. This was evidence the galaxy needed to see. Lieutenant Kyle Bennett, meanwhile, was executing perhaps the most important operation of all. He and his intelligence team had spent months planning their infiltration of the Council's central archives. The archives contained classified files dating back thousands of years. Everything from military strategies to diplomatic agreements to records of Council crimes they'd worked hard to hide. Bennett's team moved through the archive facility like ghosts, avoiding security systems with practiced ease. They reached the main data core and began downloading files. Petabytes of information, years of secrets, all copying to their portable systems. "We've got company," Eric Zimmerman warned, monitoring security channels. "Guards are sweeping this section. 5 minutes until they reach us." "We need 7 minutes to complete the download," Bennett said calmly. "Buy us the time." Zimmerman and 2 others set up a defensive position at the corridor entrance. When Council security appeared, the humans opened fire. The brief firefight echoed through the archive halls, but the humans held their ground. The guards fell back, calling for reinforcements. "Download complete," one of Bennett's technicians announced. "Everyone out, now," Bennett ordered. The team fought their way to their extraction point, where a Terran stealth ship waited. They escaped, just as Council reinforcements arrived in force. Once safely away, Bennett examined the files they'd stolen. His eyes widened as he read through the contents. "This is gold. No, this is better than gold. This is going to tear the Council apart." He sent the files directly to Admiral Drake with a simple message. "Recommend immediate public release. This changes everything." Drake reviewed the files and immediately understood their significance. The archives contained proof of Council corruption going back centuries. Treaties made under false pretenses. Wars started on fabricated evidence. Technologies stolen from developing species and claimed as Council innovations. Records of assassinations. Forced regime changes. Economic manipulation. There were also files showing how the Council operated. The Xinthians and Velkrin controlled everything behind the scenes, treating other member species as junior partners at best. Resources were funneled to the founding species while others struggled. Military losses were deliberately skewed, So non-founding species bore the brunt of casualties in council wars. Release it all, Drake told his communications officer. Broadcast it on every frequency, every network. I want every species in the galaxy to see what the council really is. Within hours, the files spread across galactic networks faster than the council could suppress them. News organizations published the documents. Independent journalists analyzed them. Citizens of council member species read with growing horror about what their government had been doing in their names. On the Toral homeworld, massive protests erupted. The Toral Confederacy's representatives to the council were recalled, and the government announced they were withdrawing from the alliance entirely. We will not be party to these crimes any longer, their premier declared. The Mindran Collective quickly followed, declaring neutrality and demanding the council dissolve its military authority over member species. 6 other species opened secret communications with the Terran Empire, seeking information about alternatives to council membership. In the council chamber, the Xinthian chair watched its empire crumbling. Representatives from member species were demanding explanations, accountability, reform. Some were demanding to leave the council entirely. Ambassador Cross tried to maintain order. These documents could be fabricated, human propaganda designed to weaken us, but the files included authentication codes, timestamp data, and corroborating evidence that made them impossible to dismiss. Even those council members, who wanted to deny the truth, couldn't argue with the proof. President Nicole Warren saw the moment and seized it. She addressed the galaxy in another broadcast. This one carefully calculated for maximum impact. To the people of the Galactic Council, we did not want this war. Your leaders demanded our surrender, and we refused. They sent fleets to crush us, and we defended ourselves. But we are not your enemy. Your own government is your enemy. She gestured to the documents being displayed behind her. These files prove what many of you suspected, but could not prove. The Council does not serve you. It serves the interests of its founding members at your expense. Your ships were sent to die at Hadrian Gate. Not to protect you, but to protect their power. Humanity offers a different path. We propose a new alliance. One built on equality rather than dominance. One where all species have an equal voice and equal rights. One where technology is shared freely, where resources are distributed fairly, where no one species rules over others. We extend this offer to any species that wants freedom instead of servitude. Join us, and together, we will build something better than the Council ever was. The speech resonated across the galaxy. Within days, ambassadors from 12 species contacted Earth, requesting information about the proposed alliance. The Council's authority was evaporating like water in vacuum. The Xinthians and Velkrin, the Council's core powers, refused to accept defeat. They began recalling their fleets to their home systems, preparing for total war. But they were increasingly isolated. The Council that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was fracturing, and humanity had provided the hammer blow that shattered it. Admiral Drake received reports of Council fleet movements and sent a simple message to all Terran forces. Defensive posture. We don't invade their territory. We prove we're better than them by not becoming them. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The Galactic Council, or what remained of it, was a shadow of its former self. In the grand chamber that had once hosted representatives from 14 species, now only the Xinthians and Velkrin remained. The other species had either withdrawn completely or were negotiating with the Terran Empire for alternative arrangements. The Xinthian chair stood alone on its platform, mandibles clicking in agitation. This is temporary. The other species will return once they realize they need us. Ambassador Cross wasn't so certain. They have the humans now. And the humans are offering them something we never did. Equality. The 4 are the one, are the one, are the one, the one. Equality is weakness, the chair insisted. Order requires hierarchy. And where has that philosophy brought us? Cross asked. Our fleet is destroyed. Our shipyards are burning. Our secrets are exposed for the entire galaxy to see. Perhaps the humans have taught us that strength without wisdom is just brutality. The chair turned on Cross with sudden fury. You would surrender to primitives? You would abandon everything the Council built? I would survive, Cross said quietly. And survival means recognizing when we've lost. While the Council remnants argued, Admiral Kevin Drake was positioning his forces for what he hoped would be the final phase of the conflict. His ships took up defensive positions at the approaches to Xynthia and Velcros, the homeworlds of the Council's founding species. The message was clear. Humanity could strike at the heart of Council power whenever it chose. But Drake had no intention of invading. President Warren had been explicit in her orders. We don't become conquerors. We prove we're different. By showing restraint. Vice Admiral Amanda Pierce studied the tactical display, showing both Council homeworlds. Their remaining fleets are gathering at Xynthia. Approximately 300 ships. If they launch an attack, it will be from there. Then we wait, Drake said. We don't fire unless fired upon. Sir, if they do attack, we'll be facing their entire remaining strength. I know. But if we shoot first, we're the aggressors. Everything we've said about being better than them becomes a lie. Drake looked at his tactical display with tired eyes. We've won this war. Now we need to win the peace. On neutral ground, far from both human and Council space, Ambassador Lisa Hartley was engaged in the most important negotiation of her career. Representatives from 9 former Council species sat around a conference table, trying to build something new from the wreckage of the old order. The Toral representative, a shimmering being of light and energy, spoke first. The Terran proposal is attractive. True equality among member species, shared technology, collective defense without dominance. But how do we know you won't become what the Council was? Power corrupts. As you humans say. Lisa had expected this question. You're right to be skeptical. The Council started with good intentions too. Probably. That's why we're proposing structural safeguards. No permanent leadership. The chair rotates every 2 years among all member species. No single species can veto decisions. Military forces remain under individual species control, with coordination only during mutual defense situations. A Mindran delegate, resembling a crystalline humanoid, added another concern. What about technology sharing? The Council hoarded knowledge to maintain power. How will the Terran alliance be different? Complete transparency, Lisa said. Any technology developed by any member species is shared with all others. No secrets, no patents, no proprietary restrictions. We advance together, or not at all. The negotiations continued for days. Every detail mattered. Trade agreements, military protocols, diplomatic procedures, resource sharing. The species around the table had all been burned by the Council's betrayals. They weren't going to accept vague promises. Finally, after a week of intense discussion, they reached an agreement. The Terran Accords, as the treaty came to be called, established a new alliance based on principles the Galactic Council had abandoned long ago. Mutual respect, shared prosperity, and genuine equality. 12 species signed the accords in the first month. More were in negotiations to join. The galaxy was reorganizing itself, and humanity was at the center of it. Not as rulers, but as equals among equals. But the Xynthians and Velcrin remained hostile. Their fleets continued to mass at Xynthia, and their propaganda networks claimed the humans were the real threat to galactic peace. Some in the Terran military worried about a final, desperate attack. Commander Jake Morrison, now promoted to admiral and given command of the defensive fleet, watched the Council ships carefully. They're running exercises, testing our response times. They're still thinking about fighting. Let them think, Drake said over the communication link. As long as they stay in their own space, we leave them alone. Major Dan Rodriguez was coordinating with newly allied species on joint training exercises. Human special operations soldiers worked alongside Toral energy warriors and Mindran tactical specialists. The cultural exchange was challenging but valuable. Your people move fast, a Toral commander observed during a training session. Rodriguez grinned. We have a saying on Earth. Speed is life. In combat, the faster force usually wins. The Council never believed in speed. They believed in overwhelming power. And look where that got them. The Toral commander's energy field flickered in what Rodriguez had learned was their equivalent of a smile. Indeed. Perhaps we all have much to learn from each other. Lieutenant Kyle Bennett and his intelligence team were now training operatives from allied species in modern intelligence gathering techniques. The Council had relied on intimidation and brute force. The new alliance would use information and strategy. The key is not just gathering data, Bennett explained to a class of mixed-species students. It's understanding what the data means. The Council had all the information they needed to know we'd fight back, but they didn't understand it because they'd never faced serious resistance before. Captain Megan Torres found herself commanding a mixed crew for the first time. The TNS Liberty now hosted specialists from 3 different allied species. The cultural differences were sometimes frustrating, but Torres was determined to make it work. Human ships feel small, a Velcrin engineer commented. Though this Velcrin was from a splinter group that had broken away from the Council. Smaller and faster, Torres corrected. Council ships were built to intimidate. Our ships are built to fight. 6 months after the Battle of Hadrian Gate, President Nicole Warren stood at the dedication ceremony for Unity Station. The massive structure hung in space at a neutral location, built jointly by 15 different species. It would serve as the headquarters for the new alliance, a symbol of cooperation replacing the Council's symbol of dominance. Representatives from every allied species attended the ceremony. Even a few independent observers from Xynthia and Velcros were present, watching quietly from the back of the crowd. Warren's speech was broadcast across the galaxy. 6 months ago, the Galactic Council demanded our surrender. They threatened us with destruction if we refused to submit. Today, we stand here not as conquerors, but as partners with species from across the galaxy. We proved that freedom is worth fighting for, but we also proved that peace is worth building. She gestured to the station around them. Unity Station represents our commitment to a different kind of future. One where strength comes not from domination, but from cooperation, where technology lifts all species instead of being hoarded by a few, where conflicts are resolved through dialogue instead of warfare. To those species still loyal to the old Council, we extend an offer of peace. Join us when you're ready. There's a place for everyone in this new alliance, even former enemies. But if you choose to remain hostile, know that we will defend ourselves and our allies without hesitation. The speech was met with approval from allied species, silence from Xynthia and Velcros. But Warren noticed that the independent observers from those worlds didn't leave. They stayed and watched the celebration, perhaps wondering what their own futures might hold. Admiral Kevin Drake stood on the observation deck of the Valiant, looking out at Unity Station. Captain Nathan Cross joined him. Both men, silent for a moment. We did it, Nathan finally said. We actually did it. We survived, Drake corrected. The hard part comes next. Building something that lasts. Think it will work? This alliance? Drake considered the question. I think it has a better chance than the Council did. We're not perfect, but at least we're trying to do better. That's got to count for something. 1 year after the ultimatum that started it all, fundamental changes had reshaped the galaxy. The Galactic Council existed only as a shadow organization, representing 2 isolated species. The Terran alliance had grown to include 18 species and was negotiating with 6 more. Trade routes that had been controlled by the Council were now open to all. Technology was being shared freely, advancing every member species. Joint scientific expeditions were making discoveries that benefited everyone. There were problems, of course, cultural conflicts, territorial disputes, economic disagreements. But they were handled through negotiation and compromise instead of threats and military force. Admiral Jake Morrison commanded joint fleet exercises, teaching unified tactics to ships from a dozen different species. The exercises weren't preparation for conquest. They were preparation for defense, ensuring that if the old council ever threatened anyone again, the Alliance would be ready. Commander Ashley Grant ran a fighter pilot training program that was producing some of the best mixed-species squadrons anyone had seen. Human pilots learned from Toral energy manipulation techniques. Toral pilots learned from human tactical aggression. Everyone improved. Lisa Hartley, now the Terran Alliance's first Secretary of Diplomatic Affairs, spent her days mediating disputes and building relationships. It was harder work than fighting a war, in some ways, but more rewarding. President Warren stood in her office on Earth, looking at a display showing the current state of the galaxy. Green markers indicated Alliance members. Blue showed species in negotiation. Red showed the Xinthian and Velcrin territories, still isolated and hostile. They'll come around eventually, her chief of staff said. They can't survive alone forever. Maybe, Warren said. Or maybe they'll become a cautionary tale about what happens when you choose pride over wisdom. Either way, the galaxy has moved on without them. She thought back to that day in the council chamber, when the ultimatum had been delivered. When Jake Morrison had activated Protocol Omega, setting in motion the events that changed everything. It had been terrifying at the time, standing up to overwhelming power, but it had been necessary. Humanity had come to the stars looking for their place in the galaxy. They'd found it, but not through submission. They'd earned their place by refusing to surrender their freedom, by fighting when they had to, and by showing mercy when they could have been cruel. The Galactic Council had believed power came from dominance. Humanity proved that true power came from standing up for what was right, even against impossible odds. And in doing so, they'd freed not just themselves but dozens of other species who had been waiting for someone to show them there was another way. Admiral Kevin Drake attended a memorial service for those who had died defending humanity's freedom. 4 ships lost at Hadrian Gate, dozens more casualties in the operations that followed. Each name was read aloud, each service member honored. They gave their lives so we could be free, Drake said during his speech. The best way we can honor them is by building a galaxy worthy of their sacrifice. A galaxy where freedom matters more than power, where cooperation beats domination, where every species, no matter how small or new, has a voice and a choice. That night, across human space and allied territories, people looked up at the stars with hope instead of fear. The galaxy was still dangerous, still full of unknowns, but it was also full of possibilities now. The old order that had ruled through intimidation was gone. In its place was something new, something better. The Terran Empire hadn't conquered the galaxy. They'd freed it. And in doing so, humanity had finally found not subjects among the stars, but friends. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, it was bright with promise, instead of dark with threats. And somewhere in the depths of space, on a station that represented unity instead of dominance, beings from 18 different worlds worked together, proving every day that the Galactic Council had been wrong about one fundamental thing. Strength didn't come from forcing others to submit. True strength came from standing together as equals, each contributing their unique gifts to build something greater than any of them could create alone. That was the lesson humanity had taught the galaxy. And it was a lesson that would echo through the stars for generations to come.